Hello everyone, myself Dr. Susengfa Gogoi. Welcome to e-Politica. Today I'm going to deliver a lecture on types of equality, formal, substantive and procedural. This is the module 2 on equality. The previous module on meaning, characteristics and types of equality was already uploaded in YouTube. So any one of you who did not notice the previous module may go and check the first module so that you can better understand this second module. The link for the first module has been uploaded in the description. Let us begin. The objectives of this module is to learn about what are the three types of equality other than the types that we have discussed in the previous module, to discuss about the meaning and features of formal equality, to discuss the meaning and features of substantive equality, to discuss the meaning and features of procedural equality. Now, we are to talk about three types of equality: formal equality, substantive equality and procedural equality. Now, why do we need to talk about these three types of equality, whereas we have already talked about other types of equalities in the previous module, such as natural equality, political equality, civil equality, legal equality, economic equality, so on and so forth. These three types of equality are also the important types of equality, mainly because these equalities are to be discussed in terms of how equality has been given to the individual. These equalities are also to be understood in connection with what amount of equality has been given to the individuals and by what means that equality has been given to the individual. Based on that, we can classify equality as formal, substantive and procedural. Now let us talk about in details about these three types of equality, one after another. First one is formal equality. Now, when you talk about formal equality basically mean to provide equality of individuals in formal sense. Now, when you talk about giving equality to the individuals in formal sense, it basically mean that how a particular nation or a government ensures equality to the people with all possible formal way without discriminating any specific group of people. So it basically means to provide equality to the people as a general concept. So this particular concept of formal equality is based on the principle of non-differential preferences. Unlike the other equality, it do not give importance to differential preferences. Now let me give you an example so that you can relate. For example, probably all of us in certain time went to movie halls. In a movie hall, there is a counter where you have to book your tickets. So while booking a ticket, in the counter you have to make a queue. So imagine in that queue there are different categories of people stand up one after another. Some of them are men, some of them are women, some of them are of different ages, maybe a children, a youth, an adult, an aged, right, of different castes also. So when you allow the people to access to that equality without giving importance to gender or on race or on caste or age, etc., can be considered as formal equality. So formal equality therefore is an non-interference or non-differential kind of equality given to the people or individuals, by which the individual can develop him or her with their own rational capacities without being differently treated by the government. So this idea of formal equality at the beginning was developed by a person who is also known as the father of political science, Aristotle. So Aristotle, he wrote a book. The name of the book was Nicomachean Ethics. So in this book, Nicomachean Ethics, he made a statement. I quote, "Things that are alike should be treated alike." I unquote. So in this particular quotation, if you look, then you can see that he said that the things that are alike should be treated alike. What he said? He said that the things that are alike should be treated alike. Now what does it mean? It means that the people in general, they do not have any degree of difference as individuals. They have similar amount of physical, similar amount of mental or rational capacities. But within the individuals, not all individuals are of similar kind of rational beings. But those people who are of similar worth must not be discriminated, must not be categorized. So therefore a uniform kind of equality must be ensured to the like-minded people. So that is what formal equality is all about. Now the very idea of formal equality, therefore, it is related with the concept of rationality or the principle of merit. Now both of this concept called rationality and merit has been linked up with the idea of formal equality. Now let me explain how. Now when you say rationality, it basically means the rational capacity of an individual to choose what is best for him, or to decide what can be the best for development of an individual self. So this formal equality believes every single individual as rational being whose capability is to understand that their best can be achieved by themselves, not by the help of others. So being as a rational man, formal equality believes that every single individual knows what is best for him or her without taking assistance from others, and to know about the calibers. So by knowing the calibers of an individual, they can enjoy their equality, and that is what formal equality is based on. The second important perspective is called principle of merit. Now when you talk about principle of merit, it basically means that not all rational beings are of equal calibers. Although formal equality do not give importance to differential preferences like we have discussed in the previously, but the meritorious one among the rational being, who is more capable to utilize the maximum benefits given by the formal orders or formal schemes, can get maximum amount of equality. So that kind of equality merit principle is also been applied in this formal equality. Now when you talk about formal equality, broadly it has two dimensions: legal equality and political equality. Now what do you mean by legal equality? Now the term called legal equality was basically developed by the classical liberal tradition. The classical liberal tradition, it has given importance while criticizing the feudal design or religious privileges in the world, and while critiquing feudalism and religious privileges, it gives importance to equal legal allocations. Now this classical liberalism, while eradicating or criticizing feudal and religious privileges, it gives importance to equal legal allocation. And why equal legal allocation is important according to classical liberalism is to ensure the basic rights of life, liberty and property. So classical liberals, they want to ensure that the basic rights of life, liberty and property of individual must be protected. And how it can be protected? It can be protected only by using legal equality. So the legal equality basically means how to ensure legal protection, how to ensure legal protection and legal benefits to everyone, despite having any kind of differences, social positions, political positions, etc. Like classical liberalist, social contextualist Rousseau also gives importance to legal equality. He thought that within a particular democratic milieu, he was the first person to talk about direct democracy, probably you know. So he has said that every single individual in the state of nature must get that legal equality. And that legal equality is very important so that there can be a formal arrangement of understanding be achieved in the society. Now broadly, when we talk about legal equality, it basically means two things. One, rule of law. The second one is called equality before law. Now rule of law basically means that law is supreme. Law is above everything. So within a nation or a country, it is the legal mechanism, it is the courts who has the supreme authority to decide whether any discrimination against people has been made or not. So court has a power to not discriminate people. Court has a power to provide equal amounts of judgments, jurisdiction over people. So that is what rule of law. So law do not discriminate people. So this is what the first thing about legal equality. The second point is called equality before law. Now when we talk about equality before law, it has two perspectives, negative and positive. So by negative equality before law means that every individual, whether he is a prime minister, he is a normal minister, a bureaucrat, or a common man, will get equal amount of punishment for similar kind of crimes. So people or individual based on any kind of socio-political positions must not be discriminated for the legal actions to be achieved due to their engagement in negative activities like crimes. So this is what equality before law. So it is negatively mean that law is equally punishable to everyone. So from a positive perspective, equality before law basically stands for equal protection of law. Now what do you mean by equal protection of law? Equal protection of law basically mean that every single individual within a country must be treated equally, and law has been made as equal to treat everyone and to protect their rights so that no one can violate. For example, if you talk about Indian Constitution, we have a special article called Article 14. What does this Article 14 say? The Article 14 basically ensures this equal protection of law, where every single individual living in the territory of India would get or recognized the similar amounts of protection from the courts. So if anyone's right has been violated by any other person or any other group of associations, he or she can move to the court for the protection of his or her rights. So this is what equal protection, that everyone would get equal amount of protection within a particular nation. But political scientists like Harold Lasky, they were very much critical about legal equality. He felt that the idea of legal equality must not be considered as a pure form of formal equality, because within legal equality also there is a seeds of inequality that persist. Now how? Lasky said that when it comes to the question of legal aid, now what does it legal aid? Legal aid basically means getting benefits of legal mechanism, hiring an advocate, moving the courts for giving judgments. So this kind of legal aid. So to having access to the legal aid, it is not equal, or it is based on a differential kind of differences. For example, as we all know that the legal mechanisms or legal aid nowadays become very much costly as an affair. So not all common individual could have afford for this kind of a highly costly legal mechanisms. So this is why Harold Lasky is very correct when he said that legal equality cannot be completely considered as a form of or dimension of a formal equality. The second one is called political equality. Now political equality, like we have discussed in the previous module, it basically stands for equal participation in public affairs. Now, there are different means by which people can participate in public affairs equally without being discriminated by the government or by the nation. There are certain ways. For example, universal adult franchise. Universal adult franchise basically mean a mechanism where people can be a voter, can get the voting right in a particular age group. For example, from 18, everyone would get a voting right, and without discriminating people, by not looking at caste, gender, race, people would get similar amount of voting capability. The second one is open recruitment to public offices, free and fair elections, free press and mass media, no special rights to any communities. So this kind of political equality ensures that every single individual would get similar amount of equality, without being discriminated. So that is why this is also called as formal equality. However, political scientists like Lasswell and Kaplan, they do not consider political equality merely as a pure form of formal equality, and so they are also very much critical about political equality, because they once said that power is never equally distributed. I quote what they said. They said power is never equally distributed, there is always an elite. I unquote. Now, in this particular definition, they said that the idea of power is unequal within. Why? Because within the power there exists an elite. So now what is an elite? So elite basically mean a group of people who are more powerful than the common man. So basically elite can be a leader, it can be the party top ministers, it can be the political leader, can be a person with economically sound than the common man. So that elite is more important in power dynamics, not the common man. So the idea of political equality, according to them, may not be considered as formal, because it also allows differential treatment among individuals. Now, based on this discussion, whatever we have discussed regarding formal equality, we can draw certain features. Now, what kind of features we can talk about? For example, number one, formal equality stands for equal treatment without discrimination. So it basically means that you want to give equal treatment, equal benefits to every single individual, whether it is health, education, sanitation campaigns, transportation. It should not discriminate people. Second one, formal equality believes that every individual knows how to utilize what is best for him with his capacity. So it is basically mean about the rational capacity of man, that every single individual is considered as rational enough to know what is his capacity and what is his capacity to gain. So he should know, or she should know, that what is best for him. That rational understanding is important. Thirdly, it believes on the principle of merit. So that is also a point that we have discussed already, that within the rational being, although all men are considered as rational, but within that rational capacity, some men are more meritorious than others. So with the using of that merit, the merit people would get more benefit than the others. That is what formal equality believes on. Formal equality is an extension of legal equality. So basically, when you talk about formal equality, we also have to talk about the legal equality. Then formal equality is meant political equality. Formal equality also ensures political equality, that we have already discussed. And formal equality ensures equal opportunity. That means you should give equal opportunity for everyone. So you do not want to differentiate among people. You are not going to give special attention to the marginalized people. So how the equality has been given? The equality has been given equally without being discriminating. So differential treatment is missing. So that's why in the beginning I told you that these three kind of equality is basically our important type of equality, because it is related with the means, the forms, how equality has been given. Now let us talk about substantive equality. Now the idea of substantive equality is completely contrary. It was completely contrary, different from the formal equality. How it is different? See, in the beginning only I told you that the formal equality is non-differential. I mean, it does not believe on differential kind of treatments. But substantive equality, it is based on the principle of equitable outcomes and equitable opportunities. So it gives importance to equitable outcomes and equitable opportunities to whom? To the marginalized groups. Now let me give you an example of the previous example that I have given to formal equality. I told you that a few people are queuing for tickets for a movie in a counter, and there was no differential treatment because everyone is queuing one after another, of different age group, different caste, different gender. Imagine a theater where there are three counters for tickets. One counter is specifically reserved for women. One counter is specifically reserved for aged. And for the other counter, the other that is left, that is only for the men and the other categories of, men. For example, maybe the children. So they will get the tickets one after another. So they will get in a subsequent manner. So this discrimination that has been made, that is what we call as substantive equality. That you want to give opportunity, you want to give outcome to every section of the society. You do not consider everyone as same. You know that there is a degree of difference that exists. For example, in every society, not everyone are of similar worth. There are people who are less economically sound. There are people who are socially backward, who are being excluded from the society. There are people who are always treated as marginalized groups, right? For example, women, children, blacks, the Sudras in India, the Dalits. So there are different categories of people. So these marginalized people, if you give special attention to them, if you want to give them special kind of equality, so that is what we call as substantive equality. So this substantive equality, therefore, it is also related with the question of protective discrimination. And we have already talked about protective discrimination in the previous module. But again, I would like to tell you that protective discrimination basically means discriminating means you do not want to give special attention. You do not want to give special privilege, but you want to protect the marginalized groups from the discrimination they have faced from the strongest communities or the strongest groups of the society. For example, if you consider it from a gender perspective, now what is this protective discrimination? From a gender perspective, protective discrimination means to provide special reservation for women in terms of political matters, political power, reservation in jobs, so that women are also being equally powerful to compete with men. So that kind of protective discrimination, which is indeed a very positive kind of a discriminative mechanism, which is also related with the idea of substantive equality. So substantive equality, therefore, it is more like giving importance to the marginalized groups and understanding on differential principle. So the idea of substantive equality, it is related with socio-economic equalities. So now what is socio-economic equality? Socio-economic equality stands for giving equal importance to everyone despite of their social positions. See, in every society we tend to stratify people. There are different categories of people that lives within a society. There are rich people, poor people, middle class, there are men, women. We tend to categorize people in different social positions. Now, these different kinds of social positions are there, but we should not discriminate people just in the name of the social positions or because of the stratification that is given by the society. So we should give equal importance to every single individual without looking at their social position. So that is what social equality is all about. Social equality also means eradicating the social discrimination. See, in every society we have different forms of social discriminations. For example, in India, we have a burner system, we have a caste system by which we tend to discriminate a certain segments of caste groups or burner groups. So that discrimination must be eradicated. So that is what social equality is. Then regarding economic equality, it means, for example, non-concentration of national wealth in few hands. That means the national wealth means the national capital of the country must not be handed by a special group of people. That means for example, the profit that been accumulated or the GDP that has been accumulated, gross domestic product accumulated by a country, must not be enjoyed only by the capitalist class. The benefits of this GDP should also goes to the common public as well by different kind of welfare mechanisms. So that is what is called as economic equality. Then guarantee of specific civic minimum, special provision for protection of weaker sections of the society, control by private sector. These are certain examples by which we tend to give socio-economic equality, and by recognizing this kind of socio-economic equality, we can ensure substantive equality. And remember that all this substantive equality has been connected with one concept. What is that? That is to provide equal opportunities to this marginalized group. So this is very important, remember that. Now, while talking about substantive equality, we need to talk about one person. The person name was Sandra Friedman. So Sandra Friedman, she has given a 4 dimension of substantive equality. The 4 dimensions are recognition, redistribution, participation, and transformation. She said that unless and until we achieve all these 4 dimensions, we would never ensure substantive equality. So substantive equality are more and large related with these 4 dimensions of equality. Let us discuss about them. What are these 4 dimensions? Now, first one is called recognition dimension. Now, recognition basically means to recognize or to identify. What identifying? Identifying the stereotypes, the prejudice, the violence on whom? On the marginalized and disadvantaged individuals. Now, what amount of violence, what amount of stereotypes, what amount of prejudices are being introduced over the marginalized or disadvantaged individuals? We need to identify them first. So for substantive equality, first of all, we have to identify the deadlocks. We have to identify the barriers, the hindrances that occurs on marginalized communities. Let me give you an example, you would understand it. For example, patriarchy. If you consider patriarchy as a violence on gender, on women, then probably we have lots of examples. For example, earlier we had a system of sati, we have a system of dowry, we have a system of parda, we have a system of children marriages, we have a system of female infanticides. From a gender perspective, these kind of stereotypes, prejudices, violences are there over the marginalized or disadvantaged women. So this identifying them, recognizing them is very important for developing a substantive equality. So this is the first thing. The second one is called redistributive dimension. Now, redistributive dimension basically mean that recognizing or identifying the deadlocks or stereotype is fine, but not merely identifying them is not enough. So what we need to do, according to her, we have to redress those disadvantages. The disadvantages that occurs on the marginalized section, we need to redress them. Redress means we have to solve them. We have to provide a solution to those problems. How it can be solved? They said that it is possible through a affirmative action. Now, what is this affirmative action? Affirmative action basically mean a positive step. It means to taking positive steps so that we can eradicate the possibility of disadvantages. For example, I'm again giving you an example of women because it is more that we can relate in. Women are being always subjugated by the men in a patriarchal kind of a setup. They are not being allowed to participate in the decision-making process of the government, also in the household. So they were not being visible publicly. For example, if you talk it as an affirmative action, then probably the 33% reservation of seats in the parliamentary or in a panchayati kind of institutions for women is one affirmative action. For example, we have a degree of difference between poor and rich, and if you develop some kind of a poverty alleviation schemes by which you want to eradicate poverty, so those are the affirmative actions. So redistributive dimension is also important regarding substantive equality. The third one is called participative dimension. Now, what is this participative dimension? Participative dimension mean that we should provide some kind of a positive way so that we can allow the marginalized community to participate as active members of the society. For example, again I'm going back to the examples, previous examples, women or shudras, they were not been given importance in the society. Earlier they were not been considered as important. They were always considered as secondary kind of a citizens, So if you want substantive equality, you have to give importance to these communities, to these groups also, so that they can participate in the society actively. So women as a policy maker, women as a decision maker in the household, Sudras as equal to the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, can be ways by which we can allow them to participate. So substantive equality also mean to allowing the marginalized community to participate in the society. The last one is called transformative dimension. Now, what is this transformative? Transformative dimension is related to the question of societal structures. So it basically means that how can we transform or modify or reform the existing societal structures which reinforce the disadvantage and discrimination over the people. So there are certain societal structures which are involved in creating disadvantages, to creating marginalizing the people, or to create discrimination on the people. For example, patriarchy is one kind of a social structure. Then probably caste is one societal structure, religion is one societal structure, race is one societal structure. These kind of societal structures, they create discrimination on people. So by transformative dimension, it means that we need to modify or reform or to transform these existing societal structures so that we can also include the difference that occurs among the people. See, the substantive equality already believe that there is a degree of difference among people. They accept that not all individuals are same, right? They believe on that. So they believe that because there is a difference between the people, that differences must also be accommodated. And how that accommodation can be made? That accommodation can be made through the transformation of the existing societal structures. So we have talked about substantive equality. So based on that discussion that we have made so far, we can draw again certain features of substantive equality. For example, number one, substantive equality believes on the coherent difference between individuals. So it basically believed that a few minutes ago I told you that they accept that all individuals are different. They have different kinds of goals. They have different social positions. They have different social issues, political issues, economic issues. So not all men are same. So that understanding is important. Secondly, because they understand that the people are different, so there is a need for a protective discrimination. So substantive equality therefore also gives importance to protective discrimination. And what is protective discrimination? Protective discrimination basically means to provide a system of protection to those people who are being marginalized by the mainstream groups. Third one is it gives more importance to the marginalized sections of the society. It is obvious. I already told you that the marginalized sections, like who are the marginalized sections that we have discussed so far? They are women, caste groups, marginalized caste groups, marginalized race groups, aged, ethnic communities, children's, refugees. So these marginalized sections, they need to be given importance in substantive equality. Then it encourages transformation of existing societal structures so that we can accommodate the difference. That point is already discussed. And substantive equality also gives importance on social and economic rights rather than political and legal equality. So substantive equality gives more importance to the social and economic equality. So these points are already been discussed. I hope you have understood about the features of substantive equality. So far we have talked about formal and substantive equality. Now we would talk about the procedural equality. Now, when you talk about procedural equality, the idea of procedural equality is related with the question of procedural democracy. And why? Because there is a nexus between democracy and equality. Now, what kind of nexus we are talking about? Democracy and equality is very much related. See, without democracy, we cannot talk about equality, because democracy is the only form of a government where we can ensure equality among people. So democracy ensures equality. So therefore, democracy can again of two types, procedural and participatory. Now, procedural democracy is a democracy where the procedures for strengthening democracy has been maintained. So where the democratic procedures are being applied. And the second one is called participatory. Participatory means where people can participate directly. So there are two types of democracy, procedural and participatory. So now we are talking about procedural equality, and this procedural equality is mainly related with the idea of procedural democracy. Now, procedural equality, it believes that every single individual is a stakeholder. Now, what is a stakeholder? See, in a democracy, the popular saying that has been made by Abraham Lincoln, what he said that democracy is a government of the people, for the people, by the people kind of thing. So he said that because the entire government has been made by the people, so it is for the people. So people has been always considered, or individuals has always been considered as the stakeholders. So they should be represented in the democracy. So therefore procedural equality believes that every single individual being as a stakeholder must be represented within the democratic regime. And how that representation is possible? It is only possible by certain mechanism, through certain mechanism. What kind of mechanism we are talking about? For example, here we can talk about the election mechanism, public grievance redressal mechanism, public welfare services, parliamentary system, etc. Now what does it mean? Let me give you a little bit of example so that you can relate. For example, when you talk about election mechanism, see, every democratic country, especially in a procedural kind of a democracy, we have an election mechanism. That means we have an election body who organize the elections, free and fair elections, regular elections they organize, where there's a procedure of voting, date of declaration of election, mandate has been given. So that kind of a procedure is maintained, and in that procedure every single individual would get equal amount of attention. You get the opportunity to participate in the election both as a voter and also as a candidate of election. So that kind of election mechanism is there. So that mechanism ensures equality among people. So this is what it is, a procedural equality, because individual enjoys that equality through that procedure of election. So that is what I'm trying to say. The second one is public grievance redressal mechanism. See, we have lots of public grievance redressal mechanism. Probably we have heard about ombudsman kind of institutions. We have certain Scandinavian countries, Norway, Finland. They have certain public grievance redressal mechanism where people can directly go to the public redressal mechanism to talk about their problems, to find out a solution to the problems. For example, in India we have this Lokpal, Lok Ayuktas kind of institutions where people can go and talk about their problems. So these are the procedures by where people can ensure their equality. Then public welfare services, for example, family welfare, children welfares, we have different kinds of public welfare services that we have. Then public distribution systems can also be one examples. Then parliamentary system, yes, parliamentary is one of the important procedures in democracy where people can got that equality to participate in the parliamentary affairs by sending the representatives. So the representative that elected by the people equally would represent them in the discussions, in the debates, and in talking about their problems, formulation of policies for them, legislating laws for them, laws for the individuals. So these are the procedural equality we are talking about. So therefore, by and large, the idea of procedural equality is to ensure equality of opportunity for individuals to take part in the governance system. So how people can participate in the governance system through the events or procedures, that is what we call as procedural equality or procedural equality. So I hope that we have understood about the three types of equality that we have talked so far. We talked about formal equality, we have talked about substantive equality, we also talked about procedural equality. So these are the two references that I want to give. Please go through these links so that you can find out more details about these items that we have discussed so far. And I hope that you have liked the discussion that I have made. So please do subscribe, like and comment on this video, and please feel free to ask anything on this content at my email ID. That is, again, I want to give you gogoi.suseng@gmail.com. I hope that we have discussed a lot about these things. In the next video, we will again talk about the other issues pertaining to equality. Till then, stay tuned, stay home, stay safe. Jai Hind.